Let's go ahead and start building the last component for our landing page. This is going to be the call to action, where we're going to give our users a little nudge to just interact with our site a little bit more and keep them moving down the conversion funnel. So here is what our call to action is going to look like. We're first going to start off with a grid container justify of space around, just like we did for our marketing buttons, and that's going to represent our entire container here from left to right so that we get our icon on the left and our text on the right. Then we'll go ahead and on the left, we'll just need a single grid item wrapping an image for our call to action image. Then on the right, we're going to go ahead and have a grid item wrapping our grid container direction of column that will allow the parent container to justify of space around correctly, and then the direction of column so that we have our text from top to bottom. So then inside of that container, we'll go ahead, that'll be the container itself. And then inside of there, we'll have a grid item wrapping a typography for our text. And then another grid item wrapping another typography for our body text. And then for our buttons, to make sure that they sit next to each other correctly, we're going to go ahead and have a grid item container from left to right with the default direction of row containing 2 grid items, each holding a button. So that'll just be for our buttons there. And we'll actually not need to wrap the grid item container with a grid item here, because as you can see, it'll work out if we have that container spanning the entire width of our container direction of column, and then we'll just have them aligned to the beginning, so that actually shouldn't cause any problems here. Let's head on over to the code editor and get started. Alright, I'm here in the code editor. Let's go ahead and in our home folder, we'll create a new file and we'll call this our call to action.js. Let's go ahead and import React from React, and we'll import the grid from @material-ui/core/grid, and we'll import the typography component from Material UI. And we'll import the button component from @material UI core button. Then we'll go ahead and import make styles from Material UI core styles, and we'll import the link from Gatsby. Let's also go ahead and import CTA from our images/cta.svg. That'll go ahead and give us our call to action icon. Then we can go ahead and create our constant of use styles equal to the make styles called with a function that will receive our theme and will automatically return our style object. Then we can export default our call to action. Make sure that's our function call to action, and go ahead and open it up. Create our const classes equal to our use styles call, and then we can return our actual elements. We can go ahead and return a grid container, the justify property of space around, just like we had gone over in the design, and then a grid item. It's going to wrap an image with a source of our call to action and an alt of call to action icon. We could actually go ahead, let's call this quality committed, just to make it a little more descriptive. So that'll be all we need to get our icon set up. Then adjacent to that, let's make sure we have a grid item so that the justify of space around works properly on these 2 items. And then inside of here, we'll go ahead and have our grid container with a direction of column. Now we can go ahead and have a grid item inside of here, first with a typography variant of h1, and this will just say committed to quality. Then adjacent to that grid item, we'll have our grid item wrapping another typography, but this time a variant of body1. This will be our actual body text. So I've got Adobe XD running here. I'll go ahead and I'll just copy this text over from the design file and go ahead and paste that in. I'll go ahead and add a period there, and then let's come underneath that grid item, and now we need a grid item container with the default direction of row, so we get our buttons sitting next to each other from left to right. Then we'll go ahead and add a grid item with our first button, which if we check the design file, it's going to be contact us, and that is an outlined button. So we'll go ahead and that'll be a variant of outlined, and that'll say contact us. Then we just need another grid item adjacent to that grid item with a button, this time a variant of contained to give it the filled in look, and that'll say create account. Let's also go ahead and we'll give these buttons a color of primary. That way they know to be our main green color. All right, so we just got that scaffolded out really quickly. That was a really simple component. So let's go ahead and save this and then flip on over to index.js. Go ahead and import call to action from up directory components home call to action. Then just underneath all of our other components, let's render our call to action. Let's go ahead and save that, flip back on over to the browser, make sure you had your development server running, and just like that, check it out, we've got our call to action. We have just a few styling things that we could fix up here. For one, I want the text inside of this button to be a white text. Prefer it to be white. And then we also don't want this just stretching all the way across in one line. So we'll go ahead and set a fixed width on that container so that it's contained and doesn't stretch all the way across. So let's go ahead and we can flip back over to call-to-action.js. And for our create account button, let's go ahead and give it a classes equal to the root of this button. We'll give it classes.account. We can come up to our style object, create the account style. Let's just give it a color of FFF. If we go ahead and save that, now we've got our white text. So then let's fix up that spacing. We'll go ahead and find the grid item wrapping our typography component. And let's give that the classes, specifying the root class for that grid. We'll give it classes.body. And then we can go up, create our body style, and let's give it a max width so it won't ever be bigger. Then let's try 45 rem. If we go ahead and save that, flip back on over, check that out. I think that looks pretty good. Now I'll nitpick just a few things since we've thrown this together pretty quickly. Let's actually also go ahead and give some spacing underneath the call to action so it's not sitting directly against our footer here. So we'll go ahead and let's find our container with justify space around wrapping the entire thing. We'll give it a classes of root for the grid, classes dot, we'll just use container, and we'll come up, create the container class, and we'll make this have a margin bottom of, let's do 15 rem. Go ahead and save that. And now we've got a little bit of space. So now I'd also like to get our text here actually centered up vertically with our call to action icon. So see here, actually I've got this helpful extension where I can draw lines across. I can't remember what this is called. It's called Page Ruler Redux. I think that's what it's called, this Chrome extension that lets me kind of draw things on the screen so I can make sure that things are lining up how I'd like them to. So see how we're lining up here against the top of our image? I'd rather it be lining up in the center of it. So since these are each just individual grid items and we're controlling them horizontally with justify of space around, giving us the space in between these, we can align them vertically using the align items prop. So let's go ahead and align our items to the center. If we go ahead and save that and flip back on over, you can see that that had the intended effect. Now let's also go ahead and add some spacing in between our buttons there, because they definitely don't need to be just right up against each other. And since we've already got the class on our account button, we can just give that a margin left, and let's do like 3 rem. See how that looks. If we save, nice. Now we've got a good amount of spacing. I think they also probably shouldn't be pressed right up against the text here. So let's also go ahead and give that a margin. Actually, no, we don't want to just give it to the account, because if we gave this a margin top of 3 rem, I believe that would cause, yeah, just that button to be offset. So what we want to do is we want to add that to the grid item, wrapping both of the buttons. Give it a classes root for the grid of classes.button container, and then scroll up to a style object, create our button container class, and give it a margin top of 3 rem. And if we save that, we see that now both of the buttons have the intended space. Now that actually makes this space look a little too big, I think. So let's go ahead and change that margin left. Let's try just 2 rem, and I think that looks a little better. All right, so this one really came together fast. Let's go ahead, and all we need to do now is actually wire up our buttons to do something. So let's go ahead and give our buttons the component prop to turn them into another component. Remember, that's a material UI specific prop. And we can give this the link that we imported from Gatsby, and then to/contact. And then for our button here, we could go ahead and give this the component equals link and to/account. So we can save that. And if we flip back on over, we can now click to go to /contact and go back, and then go to /account, which we haven't created a page for yet, but you can see the navigation was successful. So I'll just go on back here, and just like that, we just finished up our landing page, or at least the very beginning of it. We'll still have to go through and we'll start adding the responsive design, because if you notice, if we go ahead and start shrinking the page down, well, that looks okay right there, sort of, but it starts getting cut off. We've actually got a bunch of horizontal scrolling going on here, which is terrible. This looks awful. This looks okay. That's actually pretty nice. But you can see that we'll definitely have some work to do to fix this up so that it works on mobile screens and every size in between. So let's go ahead, take a break. If you need one, go ahead and walk away from the computer for a little bit. Let this all steep in your brain. It's really good after you've been learning for a while to stop learning for a while and kind of let yourself process everything. So take a break and let's come back in the next video and start working on responsive design.